Yes, so once again, hello everyone. So in today's session, uh, we'll be talking about that Boomi terminology, different terms we use in Boomi. So for that, let me switch to Notepad++. Yeah, so in the last session, I was somewhere talking about the component. And I had mentioned that everything in Boomi is a component, right? So what basically a component is, right? So if I would ask you to define it, so in Boomi, a component is a reusable object, right? So when we say reusable, that means once it is created, it can be reused. It can be used again and again, right? So, for example, let's suppose if you are creating a project, right? And in that project, you have to connect to Facebook. Okay. So, for that, let's suppose you have created a connection string, right? And that connection string that you have stored and you are using in that project to connect to Facebook. L- After some time or at later part, let's suppose you are involved in creating another project, okay, for some different customer or client, right? And in that project also just you need to connect to uh, the Facebook system, right? So what you need to do at this stage, you have two options: either the connection string which already you have stored, whether you can use that, or you need to recreate it for that particular project, right? So when you go to recreate it, right, so again you are putting some effort there, right? So in order to avoid that, in order to reduce your effort, so what basically uh, is required here? So we need to look into the aspect where we can find out some information which can be reused, right? And that is what the term reusability comes into the picture, right? So in this situation that I talked about, where earlier you created one connection string, you stored it for project A, and now you're coming to another project and you require the same connection string. So instead of recreating it, you can reuse that existing one, right? So that is what is a component in Boomi, right? It could be anything, any artifact that you're creating in Boomi, whether it is process, it is connector, it is map, profile, API. So if you're creating uh, any one of these for project A, similar sort of requirement, if you have while working in project B, you can reuse that. And that is what, uh, that is why we call it, it is a reusable object, right? And another term we use that is a process. So what is basically a process in Boomi? So a process is the actual integration flow, right? So let's suppose you have a requirement and the requirement is straightforward, which is to uh, take a message from the user and then you have to add a suffix or prefix to that message and then you have to return a response, right? So in the whole requirement, right, which is uh, something you can achieve using the process. So in this process, what you define certain steps, right? And when you combine those certain steps, okay, so that is going to give you a workflow, right? And what is that workflow is for? That workflow is to take a message from the user, add a suffix or prefix based on the logic in the workflow, and then return a final response. So, for example, if you are going to take an input from the user, which is hello, right? And the suffix uh, you are adding is my first program. So once the workflow is completed successfully, it will be returning you hello. This is my first program, or whatever suffix you have added there, right? So that is where you could say like process is the actual integration flow where you can define the steps, okay, and each step will perform some operation, right? And uh, all those steps, all those operations, all together, they build the integration workflow, right? So that's basically the processes, and we use the term process in both. Then we use another term called shape. So what is shape? So shape basically in Boomi, that is building block, and this is used to create the integration process, right? Already I mentioned that when you create the integration process, you define the steps. What you want to do at step one, step two, step three. So, for example, step one, we have to take the data from the user, and that data will be passed to step two. Step two is going to add a suffix or prefix to that message, and then the concatenated data will be passed to step three, and step three is the last step in the integration flow, which is going to return the response, right? So each step here in the integration flow is performing some activity, right? And that step in the integration flow that is defined using the term called shape, right? So in Boomi, you have different shapes, right? Uh, for example, you have the execute shape, you have the logic shape, and then uh, you have the connector shape, right? So if you look at these, right? So that execute shape. So execute shape, that means you can find all these shapes which are uh, required to do some sort of data transformation, or all the shapes where uh, data manipulation logic to be used. All those shapes are part of the execute shape. Then logic shape. Logic shape means if you have to take some decision, like like branching kind of thing, uh, if else kind of thing, like switch kind of thing. Okay, if city is this, do this. If city is that, do that. Something like that. So any logical thing, any conditional, decision, if you have to take in the integration flow, then you have to use the that logic shape. Then you have the connector shape. Connector shape, as it is clear from its name. So if you have to connect to any system, external system or any internal system, so you have to use the connector shape. For example, let's suppose if you have to connect to the Salesforce system, so you can use Salesforce connector. If you have to connect to the file system, right, then you can use the disk shape, right? So all the shapes which are used for connectivity, for establishing the connectivity, then all those shapes are part of the uh, connector shape. So if I go back to the Boomi page, right? So In the last session, we discussed about how to create a new component. I mentioned that a component in Boomi is the reusable object, right? And everything in Boomi is component, whether it is a process, it is the API service, trading partner, profiling, uh, whatever it is. And if you see, this is create component, and under component, just you can see these options, process, which kind of component you want to create, right? Process, API service, or what it should be, right? So that's component. Process is all about the integration flow. We'll see that in later classes, right? And then I mentioned about these shapes. So here you can see all these shapes: the connect shape, the execute shape, and logic shape, right? So here all these shapes basically part of execute, and all these shapes are used to uh, play with the data. If you have to do some sort of data manipulation thing, uh, uh, all basically, if you have to take some sort of decision, right? So all related shapes will be part of this logic shape, and then all connectivity related shapes you can see here, right? And this is to add shape, right? So this is all to show and hide. Okay. This is all the process options you have, so that we can talk about this later on. Uh, and the right hand side area of this, that the shape explorer, right? So that's basically your design canvas, right? And uh, Boomi is low code tool. So low code tool means you don't have to write coding uh, very much, right? So it is something kind of ready-made thing where you can use the drag and drop features, and with this drag and drop features, you'd be able to create the process. This is the process or integration workflow, right? So this is all for today's session. Thank you.